Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to cross the water to Denmark once again, and we're going to revisit a brewery that I haven't had anything from in a little while, but I've had some very good experiences from these guys in the past. And this is also a style of beer that you don't see all that often these days, but one that I always used to enjoy actually. So for this review then we are going to go to Ålborg on Jylland, which is the mainland part of Denmark. Ålborg is right up in the kind of northern part of that peninsula. And we're going to have another beer from Bad Seed Brewing. So this one is called You Want It Darker, and it's a black IPA coming in at 6% ABV. So one of the lower alcohol black IPAs that I've come across in recent times. And one of the things I always felt about this style was that I tended to prefer them when they were imperials, and the main reason for that was that I always felt having a little bit of that kind of caramel, the sweet brown sugars that you get with the imperials, I always felt that kind of balanced out the roastiness and toastiness quite nicely. But in recent times I have found a few that have kind of disproven that sort of hypothesis that I was making about this beer style. So I'm really curious to see what this one has in store for us. Like I was saying, this is a style that you don't find all that often these days. It was all the rage back in like 2013, 2014, something like that. If it's done right, it can be very, very nice. But I have noticed there's a number of Swedish breweries having a go at these again, along with some Schwarz beers as well, which is quite interesting. So I have been reviewing a few of these over the last couple of months. But Bad Seed Brewing, a really nice little brewery in my experience. The last beer that I reviewed from them was a barrel-aged version of the Good Morning Vietnam, a Vietnamese coffee stout. Lower in alcohol, I think. I think it was only about 8.5–9%, something like that. But it turned out very nicely, and it gives me high hopes for this beer actually. So very curious to see how this one turns out. One of my favourite black IPAs ever was also Danish, the Toil Black Salts and Body Malts. So hopefully this one follows in that light to some degree. But very curious to see how it turns out, and as always I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer. We'll see how we get on. So as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Bad Seed Brewing before. No doubt I will add some more at some point in the near future. There's all the usual social media down there as well. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the home page and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Danish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, quite regularly though, because I live very close to Copenhagen and can bring stuff back with me. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Bad Seed Brewing. So Bad Seed Brewing were founded back in 2015 by Frederick Hector Schmidt, and he'd been working in a beer store in Ålborg called Ölkonsortiet. I believe Peter over at the Master of the Hoppets might have worked there for a period of time as well. But while he was there, he became very good friends with a guy who homebrewed, and he began to join in with them, and they continued to experiment, and then together they joined a local homebrewing community. Later on he moved to Copenhagen and he took up an internship at Nørrebro Bryghus, and he worked for a few other breweries as well before setting up Bad Seed Brewing for himself. So he started brewing his beers at Ölkollektivet, which is a collective brewing space in Görlöse, to the kind of northwest of the city. It used to be home to Stronzo Brewing, and these days it's home to Gamma and Dry and Bitter, and a few other breweries have kind of come and gone from there as well. But he started brewing up there at Ölkollektivet as a phantom gypsy brewery, and the first beer that he released was the Lazarus IPA. But he was also working as a bar manager for Brewers Inc. at the same time. But these days they have their own brewery, which is quite close to Ålborg on Jylland in Denmark, kind of up the top of the peninsula if you like, and they began production there in October of 2018, and they've gradually been expanding both their brewing capacity and also the range of beers over the last little while as well. As of February 2020, when I'm filming this video for you, they've produced in the region of 60 different beers, and there's quite a variety of different styles in there, a few barrel-aged things, and I think there's a couple of sours and stuff in there as well. But yeah, that's all I'm really able to tell you about Bad Seed Brewing for the moment. I haven't tried too many of their beers. This will be the second one that I've tried in recent times, because for a while I didn't manage to find any of their beers. I think when I first moved over here I saw one or two of them in Copenhagen, but then before that But then after that, sorry, until now, I hadn't managed to come across any of them. So it was quite nice to discover the Good Morning Vietnam and then to come across this one when I was in Kiosk about a week ago now. So really curious, as I say, to see how this one turns out, and if you get the chance to try some of their beers, I do recommend that you do. But yeah, that's all I'm able to tell you. If you want to learn more, check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Beer Advocate and Untappd pages to learn more about all the different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this one then and see how we go with it. So as you can see, there's some nice sort of astronomical artwork on this one. I can't remember if there were any different Bad Seed beers over there in Kiosk when I picked this one up, but this one caught my eye because of the sort of astrophysics side of things. If you've watched the channel before, you will know that by trade I'm an astrochemist, molecular astrophysicist, however you want to term it, back in the days when I was still doing my science stuff. But yeah, really nicely presented, and there you can see a face on the side there as well. I'm not sure who exactly that is meant to be, but it just says you want it darker. It's maybe a reference to a song or something like that, I'm not quite sure. But on the side here it tells you this one is a 6% black IPA with Chinook, Simcoe and Columbus. And we know Columbus is quite a popular bittering hop, Chinook gives you that lovely kind of big piney resin and also quite a strong grapefruit, and Simcoe normally it's a big kind of soft passion fruit thing, but if you put it in with a dark malt base, it can give you some really interesting sort of plummy, raisiny notes actually. So, you know, very curious to see what this one has in store for us. It's quite a popular hop to use in black IPAs, that actually. But a 440ml can, this one. So without further ado, let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting then. I'm really curious to see how this beer turns out. So let's get it out and into the glass. And I'll tell you straight away with this one, you can smell some of that lovely fruity character coming out of this beer as we pour it out. So yeah, as you can see with this one, and as you would expect from a black IPA, this one's poured a lovely kind of, I would say that's almost a kind of Coca-Cola colour. It's a rich kind of dark ebony rosewood. If you shine the light through it, it does have a little bit of a kind of chestnutty edge to it, but to me it's mainly a dark kind of Coca-Cola rosewoody type colour. There's some lovely fruity notes coming out of this one, but we'll look at the aroma a little bit later. But as you can see, there's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones heading up towards the bottom of that head there, and you can see the head incidentally is about a half finger of a frothy, light kind of beige colour there. I don't know if you could describe that as fawn, I'm not quite sure, but there you can see the nice colour of this head. But overall it looks very, very nice, and you know, kind of pretty much what you would expect from a black IPA. So nothing overall surprising about this beer, or nothing particularly surprising I should say about this beer, considering it is a black IPA. So let's have a closer look at that aroma then and just see how we get on. I will say as well that this one is quite hazy. When you put the light through it, you can see there is a good bit of haze to this one. Oh yeah, straight away with this one, you've got that roasty, toasty black malt sitting in there. You've got a nice little bit of a kind of well-fired bread crust. That makes me wonder if they've used Carafa in this. Very good malt to use in these black IPAs. It's made by Weiermann in Bamberg in Germany, and you know, it is nice because it gives you the kind of toastiness and everything that you would expect of black malt, but it's just not quite as harsh almost. And just going by the aromas in this beer, I do suspect there is a bit of Carafa in this one. It's not quite smooth enough to be coffee, like I say, like a really, really well-fired toasty bread crust that comes out of this one. There's a wee bit of a kind of toasty caramel coming out of the beer, also a little bit of sweeter caramel in the middle too. In some ways this beer, the fruits that come out of this are very red, so it does make me kind of think of it as more of a Cascadian dark than a black IPA, but in fairness, there's very little between the borders of those styles, to be honest. You know, it's almost like a synonym, to be fair to you. You know, this one really is very, very nice actually in terms of its aroma. Some nice toasty brown sugars in there, a little bit of biscuit like I said, and it's sitting on top of that kind of roasty, bread crusty type malt base there. There's a few woody undertones to this one as well, maybe one or two little nutty notes as well, but the malt base has pretty much everything that you would expect of this style, and it's for a 6%er within this style. It does actually have a good little bit of sweetness to it, because normally you would expect the sweeter ones to be, you know, right, 8-9% sort of thing. So this one does have a good degree of sweetness to it, I have to say, but it does have the kind of lighter toastiness and roasty bread crusty notes that you would expect of the lower ABV black IPAs as well. But overall, a really nice smelling black IPA in terms of its malt base, and some of these fruity characters are very nice too. So on the hoppy side of things, you can pick out a little bit of earthiness to this one, but I think that takes a back seat. On the green side of the hops, to me it actually leans towards the grassy side of things. I was expecting it to be a little bit more kind of floral and spicy because of the Columbus, and you know, Chinook would normally give you some big piney resins as well, but to me, this one, it really strikes me as being more kind of grassy, and that mixes in with the kind of fruity notes that the beer has as well. So yeah, that's a really interesting point to make about this beer. So yeah, in terms of the fruity side then, for me there's a good bit of a kind of plummy note to this one, a very kind of juicy plum. There's a wee touch of a raisiny sharpness in there. It's got some nice kind of figgy qualities to it as well, and then if you smell it a little bit more, it does have a little bit of an almost red curranty kind of note to it. It doesn't have the blackberries and black currants and stuff that you might get in like some stouts and things like this. To me, it's actually quite sharp and raisiny. It's really leaning towards those raisiny type notes, but there's a bit of a plummy juiciness and also some figgy juiciness lying in under there as well. So what I'd say about this one is, it doesn't strike me as the most complex black IPA that I've come across in terms of its aroma, but it really does have a very nice kind of straight shooting aroma in that way. I like the way the fruits come out of this one. They're lovely and juicy and sharp in the beginning, and you'll get that as soon as you open up the can pretty much. So take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it, but we're going to have a taste of this one now and just see how we get on. This one is the You Want It Darker black IPA, coming in at 6% ABV with Chinook, Simcoe and Columbus from Bad Seed Brewing just outside of Ålborg in Jylland in Denmark. Let's get stuck into this one. Nice to return to Bad Seed after quite a wee while. Slange, skål. That's pretty damn nice, I have to say. It's interesting, this one. The first impression I have of this is that it's very smooth. And you know, some of these black IPAs, they can be very dry actually, but this one really has it does dry out in the aftertaste, which is common for the style, right enough, but really this one strikes me as being very smooth actually. This gets a thumbs up from me. Well done to Bad Seed for this one of the smoother, more sessionable almost black IPAs that I've come across actually. I like this. The other thing you're going to notice about this one is that when you take it in, it actually comes into your palate as being quite sweet, and that's from the fruity side of things. It's got a really juicy fruity sweetness in the beginning, and then it really starts to dry out and give you some more of these kind of malty characteristics. So I really like that about it actually. So yeah, where do we start with this one then? So straight away, the middle of your palate with this one, you can feel that kind of roasty, toasty bread crust. That just blankets the middle of your palate. In fairness to it as well, at the back of the palate, it's definitely a bit more kind of roasty and dry. But then as you come further forward, you start to get the more kind of brown bready elements out of the malt base. So you can feel it kind of softening up a little bit as you come forward on the palate. If you go to the front corners of your tongue and move in a little bit, there's a little touch of woodiness to the beer. There's definitely a little bit of that there. If you go to the very centre of your palate as well, there's a nice kind of sweeter caramelly note to it also. The caramelly notes, of course, covering up the boozy aspects of the beer. But the caramel to me comes across as quite sweet, and as you move out from the centre of your palate, you might detect a little bit of a kind of biscuity quality, like a McVitie's digestive actually, coming out of this one. But yeah, this beer, it really comes in. For a black IPA, this is one of the sort of fruitier ones that I remember. But the way that the malt base goes together in this is really nice. It's one of the lighter and smoother malt bases that I remember from this style as well. As you progress further into the aftertaste with this one, you can feel the centre of your palate just drying out a little bit, but at the same time it really does remain really nice and smooth. The nutty, I was getting a few nutty undertones to this beer in the aroma. That does not come out in the flavour at all, I would say. So to build up the layers of this beer then, the base layer, back of the palate, it's got a nice kind of roasty, toasty quality to it. At the front of the palate, that becomes a little bit more sort of brown bready, a little bit like that German brown bread. Centre of your palate, you've got a nice kind of sweet caramelly note to it, not toasty at all, really just quite sweet. And as you move out, pardon me, towards the edge of your tongue, you get a little bit more of a kind of biscuity, McVitie's digestive sort of thing. And as you go to the front centre, the front corners of your palate, then move in a little bit, you will detect a few sort of woody undertones to the beer as well. On the hoppy side of things then, if you go to the back corners of your palate, it's got a little bit of earthiness there, and the earthiness I think gets a bit darker again the further you go into the aftertaste, and it suits the way that the middle of your palate dries out a little bit. There is a good little bit of earthiness to this one. As you come further forward along the side of the palate, the earthiness does push its way forward as well, but as you reach the front corners of the tongue, you get that kind of spicy floral aromatic note that you would expect of Columbus, and there is a wee touch of pine resin to this one, which will be coming from the Chinook as well. But as you go round the front curve of the palate, it is a little bit lighter and grassy in my mind. Then behind the front curve of the palate, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy, fruity esters start to push their way out of the beer. But yeah, like I say, when you take this one in, it's fruits pretty much straight away, and I think that's the Simcoe giving you a lot of that that kind of character. Simcoe can give you some really, really nice red fruity notes when it's mixed in with the dark malt bases like this. Simcoe and Carafa is a really winning combination when it comes to a black IPA. I really like how that goes together. And it would be on the basis of this one, I'd be very interested to see how these guys would do an Imperial black IPA. This one is a little brother of an Imperial. This works really well actually. But in terms of that fruitiness then, let's focus on that. So, when you take this beer in, it does come in with a little bit of an almost raisiny sharpness, but then as that kind of mellows out a bit, it becomes a little bit more like plummy, and then eventually it moves on to be a little bit more kind of figgy. But you also get, there is almost a little bit of kind of zestiness on the front of the palate there as well. If you go to the very kind of front tip of your tongue, there is just a little bit of a citricy, zesty type quality to this beer, which is quite interesting. And that really suits it, but to me, it's the impact that you get out of the fruit on this is really nice. And they linger there, that sort of figgy note, and also some of the kind of plummy qualities in this beer, those really linger there the further that you go into the aftertaste as well. In terms of its fruitiness, I don't think this is the most complex black IPA that I've come across, but I do think this one does have a degree of just nice, easy drinkingness, if that makes sense to it. It really is quite a sessionable one. This, I mean, again, to me, the black IPAs are not really a sessionable beer. This is the sort of beer, as a style, I think this is the sort of beer you would have when you're transitioning from some kind of IPA and you're thinking, right, maybe my second last beer, you know, I'll have like a black IPA or a brown ale or something like that, then you'll go for one of the big heavy imperial stouts as your last one. You know, that's when I would always drink a black IPA. That said, you could also have it with you know, as a dessert beer, just to have something a little bit lighter rather than having a big heavy imperial stout. But this is definitely one of the kind of juicier, fruity ones that I've come across, and it's got a lovely smoothness to it as well. So thumbs up to Bad Seed for the flavour of this one. Those are the two things that strike me as being quite unique about this one actually. It's almost got a little bit of that kind of Czech Tmavy kind of smoothness to it, the Czech black lagers basically. The malt base in this one really strikes me as being quite similar to that actually. So yeah, mouthfeel wise then, this one I would say It's kind of at the midway point of mid-bodied, kind of a straight down the line beer. Carbonation does have a little bit of crispness to it. The mouthfeel overall, it's got a little bit of an oily character. Very smooth, like I said. Does get a little bit drier later on. As I say, a straight up mid-bodied, smooth, slightly oily, and to some degree a little bit crisp beer actually. I do wonder, maybe there could be a little bit of Pilsner malt, just in the very... you do get a little bit of crispness towards the back of the palate in this one now that I think about it. In terms of hoppy bitterness, there is a good bit of bitterness coming from the malt base in this one as well, the Carafa malt. So you've got a wee bit of a sort of black malty roasty quality there as well. So maybe this one's sitting around the sort of 60 IBU mark, maybe pushing 70. But it does have a good degree of smoothness to the malt base as well. There's a little bit of sweetness in the middle of the palate too, so you've got quite a few different things going on in that malt base. The hoppy bitterness is, I think, a little bit less than that. So the bitterness that you get out of this beer, the sort of 60 IBUs, is a kind of combination of both. But like I said, you've got a lovely juicy fruity note to this one. It's a little bit oily the further you go into the aftertaste, but it starts off almost a little bit sharp and then just juices up very, very nicely. But in terms of the black IPA style, I think this is a really nice, lighter, juicier, and kind of smoother example almost. It's almost a little bit like a Czech Tmavi, but with just a little bit more kind of hoppy character to it and things, and a bit more fruitiness as well. So a really nice take on this style in my opinion. One of the better lower alcohol ones that I've had. As I say, this is a style that I normally prefer in the Imperial bracket, but Bad Seed have given me something to think about as well. But I think when I've tried other examples of this style in recent times, I've also said the same thing. So maybe it took an Imperial Black IPA for me in the beginning to learn to appreciate this, but you know, the more and more I drink of them, I start to appreciate the lower alcohol ones as well. But a lovely beer this, and definitely cool to return to Bad Seed Brewing after a little while too. So this one was the You Want It Darker, a 6% Black IPA with Chinook, Simcoe and Columbus in it, from Bad Seed Brewing, just outside of Ålborg, home to Peter the Master of Hoppets. On Jylland in Denmark. Really cool to return to this brewery, and I hope that you've enjoyed my take on this beer. I'm sure we'll return to these guys at some point soon. I do need to make sure I review like a lighter beer from these guys, like a lager or a regular IPA next time, because it's been a barrel aged stout and now a black IPA, so I think it's a regular IPA or something along these lines that should be up next. But yeah, thank you for watching my reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Bad Seed Brewing as well. I'm sure we'll return to these guys at some point soon. Check out my social media. Do make sure you give a check out Peter, Master of the Hoppets, if you haven't already. And I will catch you guys very soon. The You Want It Darker, a 6% black IPA from Bad Seed Brewing near Ålborg on Jylland in Denmark. Slange, skull, catch you guys very soon.